It's Pyram King, and welcome to another guide of Curse of Strahd. This one is the Wolf Den. This is the first one for 2022, and I'm here in my new apartment, new office, finally. Really excited. I got my desk, everything set up to bring you a lot more Curse of Strahd here in 2022. Now, thank you, huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters. It's your support allows me to put these detailed video guides together. You guys have been amazing on the Discord channel too, as well as sharing some great ideas, your own stories, suggestions, your artwork. Really appreciate it. A big thank you to you. If you're a Patreon supporter at the adventure supporter level, the Foundry, your names are in here in the credits. So a huge thank you. And if you're a PDF supporter, your name's posted in the PDF. Now, if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, everything you see here in this video is in a detailed PDF guide with token pack as well that you can download. And for those of you playing in Foundry, all of this is a Foundry adventure module that you can go ahead and install right into Foundry. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon member, supporting me on this epic journey through Curse of Strahd, you can. There's a link down below to patreon.com/Pyram King. Now, a special shout outs to DM Andy. You're going to be looking at some gorgeous battle maps today that he's graciously allowed us to include in our own Foundry adventure modules. If you're playing on another virtual tabletop system or playing at home and you're looking for some gorgeous Curse of Strahd maps, he makes them in grid, non-grid, night, day, weather effects. Head over to his Patreon page. There's a link in the description down below. In addition, James from James RPG Art has been very gracious to allow us to include WebP low resolution versions of his gorgeous digital matte paintings that we use as theater of the mind. You're going to be seeing a couple of them here today. If you're interested in them in high resolution or his animated versions, which I highly recommend, even if you're playing at home on a tabletop, putting them up on a big screen really draws you into the story. Head over to James RPG Art's Patreon. There's a link in the description below. Last but not least, these Foundry adventure modules would not even happen if it wasn't for Blair and his Scene Packer module. If you're interested in making your own adventure modules for Curse of Strahd or any campaign that you're going to play, head over to Blair's Patreon page. Check out Scene Packer. Blair's also on our Discord channel as the developer. If you have any questions about how this stuff works or Foundry questions related to the Scene Packer module, he's on there, always willing to chip in and help. Now, I have to mention three important people for this particular session of the den, the Wolf Den, and that's Lunch Break Hero, Dragna Carta, and Mandy Mod. They are huge inspirations to me, big contributors. I call them the big three content providers for Curse of Strahd. I've put a link to Lunch Break Hero's Wolf Den video, Dragon Carta's Reloaded, and Mandy Mod's references to the lycanthropy in there. A lot of those things I've pulled and used from. They're great reference material. You should definitely go check them out. So let's go ahead and dive into this epic session. Now, as you know, I'm really into pulling in and weaving in more of the story, more of the lore. I feel that I want my players to be immersed into the story, to be a participant in this epic campaign. And for me, I felt the Wolf Den, when I was reading it in Curse of Strahd, kind of felt like an afterthought, like it was just plug and played into it. And this has got the core. I mean, you got werewolves, you got this Wolf Den. It's such a great opportunity to really expand upon it and make it something special and weave it in to the entire storyline. Now, what I did with this is I included some stuff referencing to the Fae Quest. And as you know, if you've watched the Fae Quest video, that's kind of the big epic grim fairy tale gothic horror quest that ties everything together. So I did some connections into that. You're going to see that here. But I thought it'd be important before we jump into the session to get a background on where the werewolves came from, what's going on with Strahd, how does that tie into the Fae Quest. Talk a little bit about the current clan, and then talk about lycanthropy in Barovia, which is slightly different. So let's start off with the werewolf backgrounds here, shall we? So the history of the werewolves. So the Worg, which are giant wolves that speak common. So the Worg were here long before the humans were here. And the Worg are friends and allies to the Fae. So when the humans first came to the valley here, well over 1,000 years ago, the Worg agreed to remain in the mountains, in the Baratok Mountains, and to leave the humans in peace. And the humans agreed never to venture into the Baratok Mountains. That was Worg territory. And so the humans and the Worg have stayed away from each other for centuries. Now, when the Dark Powers first came to Barovia, and you can read about that in the Fanes of Barovia book, when the Dark Powers first came was the first time we saw werewolves appear. And when we get to the Amber Temple, you're going to realize that one of the Dark Powers in the Amber Temple is the ones that brought lycanthropy to Barovia. There's a whole storyline there in the Amber Temple about that. And this is the first time you see werewolves appear. And this, again, is about 1,000 years ago or so. And the villagers throughout Barovia run the werewolves out into the forest. Now, the Worg see these humans that have become werewolves, have no control over this curse, the werewolf curse. The Worg take them into their clan, and they show the werewolves how to live off the land, how to hunt, and they even begin to show them and teach them what's called the Taming Ritual, so that the werewolf can tame the beast within them, control the beast, convert into a werewolf on those nights of a moon, and control themselves as a werewolf. So it's that relationship with the Worg and the werewolf become very important. And for centuries, the werewolf and Worg live up in the Baratok Mountains and leave humans alone. The Dark Powers have been moved into the Amber Temple, and things seem fairly peaceful. And centuries have passed, and the werewolves and Worg become almost mythical and legendary. No one's seen them. Well, then the Great War comes. This is approximately 400 years ago. And Strahd comes, and he attempts to recruit the werewolves. He tells the werewolves and uses their hatred for being exiled and ostracized by the human villagers. He preys upon that and says, look, I'm going to give you the opportunity to take vengeance and revenge on those humans that kicked you out of the village, that treated you as nasty creatures. And the werewolves agree. This is their opportunity to take revenge. And so they join forces with Strahd. And they're overcome with this animalistic bloodlust, and they began these horrible atrocities on the villagers, tearing them apart and feeding on them during the Great War. Well, it's Saint Markovia who trains the wolf hunters how to silver their weapons in Kresk and fight the werewolves. So during the Great War, the wolf hunters silver their weapons, and they drive the werewolves off back up into the mountains, thanks to Saint Markovia teaching them how to do this. And again, no one's seen werewolves for centuries until recently. So that gives you kind of the history of where the werewolves come from, how the Worg train the werewolves to live on their own, showed them the Taming Ritual. The Worg have been out of the story for a long time because they agreed not to mess with humans. They're very strong allies and loyal to the Fae. Now, there's the legends of the werewolf. The legend of the werewolf is a myth or a story that's often told in taverns, like you might be in the Blue Water Inn or the Blackwater Tavern in Vallaki, or perhaps you're in the Blood and Vine Tavern in the village of Barovia, or even in Kresk, or maybe you're around some wolf hunters, and you can imagine you're hearing this as you're in one of the taverns or inn. And this legend's told over and over again, and you can slightly change this. I would have each PC that tells it slightly alter it just a little bit, but there's a kernel of truth in it, and this is the way the legend goes. Long ago, during the time of the Fae, before the time of the kings, a large wolf that could speak the common tongue lived in the mountains north of Lake Baratok, and they called this large wolf the Worg. One day, a small boy from the village of Kresk wandered into the woods and was attacked by a large wolf. Some believe it was this Worg. The boy survived the attack, but on the first full moon, the boy turned into a wolf and ran off into the woods. The boy was raised by the Worg as if it was his own son, and the boy learned to speak with the animals and hunt like a wolf. Over time, the boy grew, and as he grew, each full moon, This boy in wolf form would stalk a helpless villager, capture them, and turn them into wolf like himself. Today, villagers lock their doors at night. They don't let their children out beyond the walls or out at night, and only the bravest of wolf hunters attempt to hunt the werewolf. Those that do rarely return. So this is the legend. There's a kernel of truth to it, but this is the story that's often told in taverns and pubs and in corners, or parents tell their children to keep them scared, to lock their doors, to keep them in the villages at night. And so this is a great way to have, like, you could be telling the story going on in the background in one of the pubs or taverns. Now, what's important before you run this session, the Wolf Den session, and the encounters that we've put in here, is if you've watched the other videos, you know we've sprinkled in some hints, some stories, and some encounters with the werewolves, and you want to know, as the dungeon master, what the players may or may not know about the werewolves. And I put a bunch of links to the video segments in here, to the exact timestamps and video segments. So we have the legend here, which you can be sharing through the different taverns, but you also have that werewolf encounter at the Wizard's Tower. Remember, if the Wizard Tower's collapse, it draws the werewolves to come to find out what's going on. You have the werewolf encounter that I've added to the Raven River Bridge. That's the one, those are the three unique encounters. That's the bridge on the way to Kresk, the Raven River Bridge encounter. You have the entrance at Kresk. Remember, the guards at Kresk are mentioning that they're having a werewolf problem. That's the White Claw wolf storyline from Dragna Carta. You have the Daravich, who's the wolf hunter that lives in Kresk. We're going to talk about him some more. He's a really interesting character that's involved loosely in this Wolf Den session. You have the werewolf versus Worg encounter on the road on the way to the Abbey, where the Worg is getting attacked by the werewolf. And then you have Scran and Zella. Scran and Zella run the leather working goods in the town square of Vallaki. Remember, their daughter has been converted into a werewolf. And these people, these are the potential situations or interactions that your players and player characters have had in order to learn a little bit about what's going on with the werewolves in the Wolf Den. Now, remember, if you've watched my campaign start, there's a potential player hook where you can give one of your players lycanthropy as well. And part of that personal quest line is to get rid of this curse or deal with lycanthropy however you decide to see fit. So that might be some additional player knowledge. Excuse me. All right. Let's talk about the clan itself and what's going on now. So you know the history. You know what happened during the Great War. You know the legends. What's going on with this clan right now? And let's go through that. So we got the Wolf Clan here. So the clan is divided into two packs. And the way that I view packs is like this. A pack is like a family unit. You have the alpha, the leader of the pack, and the pack is together because it's either through blood, through some kind of ritual mating or marriage, or through loyalty. And the Wolf Den, it's a clan of two packs. There's Kiril's pack and Emil's pack. And a clan is a bunch of packs that have decided to live and work together. And then there's a clan leader, which is usually one of the pack leaders, becomes the clan leader in charge of all of the packs and all of the werewolves. The current leader of the clan is Kiril, and he has been leading the clan down a very dark path. He's been leading these hunts to kidnap and capture human children, bringing them back, having the human children fight among themselves to the death, and then the one that survives, they would convert into a werewolf. And Kiril believes this will strengthen the pack. They're going to only find the strongest children, and convert them into werewolf. Now, these actions have fractured the entire clan because Emil's pack find, this whole children thing atrocious. This is not, what werewolves are, right? And so he also believes it's weak, it's cowardly, it's going to lead to problems with the humans. Remember, centuries ago, they were run off during the Great War by the wolf hunters. The last thing they want is more wolf hunters hunting these werewolves. Right now. So the pack is kind of broken up and was breaking up. And as this was going on, right, Kiril was leading this. One of the elderly werewolves that was her name was Whiteclaw, challenged Kiril, saying, "This is wrong. We're not hunting children. This is wrong." And Whiteclaw challenged Kiril, and one of the staunch supporters of Kiril's way, took up the challenge against Whiteclaw. And Whiteclaw said, "Look, we don't eat human children. We only eat what we kill." So Whiteclaw, in a rare instance, Whiteclaw challenged another werewolf, and they fought to the death. And Whiteclaw, the female elderly werewolf, won. And right when she finished winning, she actually, to make her horrid point, she actually fed on the flesh of the fallen werewolf. I mean, this was a line too far. I mean, werewolves don't feed on other werewolves. But she wanted to make a point. But it was so atrocious, she was exiled from the pack for doing that. However, her point was very clear. This clan is falling apart. It's going down a very dark path. It's gone to a point where werewolf has attacked werewolf and werewolf has fed on another werewolf. I mean, it was atrocious. And this whole scene plays out. Now, a few of the former elder werewolves decide to leave the clan at this point, including Whiteclaw's mate, which is Skennis. So Whiteclaw's exiled her mate, and he's an elderly werewolf. He's just horrified of what's happened, and horrified that his mate would do something like that. But everybody knows that Whiteclaw's correct. So as this plays out, Emil, the leader of his pack, stands up and he says, "Look, I advocate what we keep the children that we do have. We convert all of them into werewolves, stop having them fight. That'll increase the pack size, and we stop kidnapping, torturing, and having these kids fight each other, and we stop feeding off these dead human children." And he reminds all the werewolves, Whiteclaw was right. We only eat what we kill. We don't eat like roadside or dead animals. We're not vultures. We eat what we kill. And feeding off of human children, this is just cowardly. He makes another very important point. This kidnapping of children and raiding these villages, all it's going to do is bring down upon us a war with the humans. I mean, wolf hunters will get emboldened and they'll start hunting us, and we don't want to be hunted. We are the hunters, right? And what happens is his speech moves the pack, and even members of Kiril's pack start agreeing with Emil. And Kiril realizes at this point that the clan's turning against him. So Kiril leaves. Kiril leaves with his mate Bianca, his most staunch supporter at this point, Lars, and Lars's mate Davanka. So the four of them leave the clan. And Emil's now made the leader of the clan. And he reverts back to their old ways, leaving the human kids alone, not going to the village, staying up in the Baratok Mountains. Everything seems to be going back and slowly going back to normal. And then one day, Emil goes out for a hunt, and he doesn't return. Now, as is tradition with the werewolves, Emil's mate, Zuleika, takes over the clan. And she's waiting for her mate, Emil, to return. Well, guess who shows up? Kiril shows up with Bianca, Lars, and Davanka, the four that had left. And Kiril shows up with two huge dire wolves. Now, this is highly unusual because the werewolves who are friendly with wolves are not friendly at all with dire wolves. Dire wolves are in Strahd's domain. They are, under Strahd's rule. So immediately when Kiril shows up with this dire wolves, Kiril doesn't have to say anything. It's just implied that he has the backing of Strahd. You don't show up with dire wolves at your side unless you're in league with Strahd. Now, Kiril says, "Look, Lars and all of us will help try to find Emil. And if he comes back, great. He's the leader. And you've all agreed. But if we can't find Emil by the first full moon, Kiril is going to be the leader again." Excuse me. So guess what? Kiril, Lars, nobody finds Emil, obviously. This is a huge setup, obviously. You can read it between lines. Kiril goes off. He sees Strahd. Strahd agrees, gives him the dire wolves. He comes back. When Emil's off hunting, some way they dispatch with Emil, and then Kiril comes back and he leaves the clan. When Kiril comes back, he reverts the old ways. They start kidnapping children. They start torturing them, feeding off the dead, turning the strongest one into a werewolf. And Kiril gets even more emboldened. They start raiding the supply wagons from Vallaki to Kresk. So there's, once a month or so, a supply wagon with weapons, furs, they trade with one another, these villages. Kiril's been raiding these supply wagons as well. So things are escalating. And now there's problems in Kresk, and there's werewolves been seeing around Kresk. And as you know, if you've been in Kresk, there's some problems going on with the werewolves. So let's talk about the clan. I broke the clan up into the two different packs, a brief little paragraph description of each, so that it'll help you role play and understand the dynamics of each of the werewolves in the den. So we'll start with Kiril's packs first. I'll show you a little picture of Kiril here. Let me just move this over. Here's Kiril here. And what I did with each of the werewolves is I made some slight adjustments. Some of them might have a little bit more strength or a little bit more dexterity, a little bit more hit points, making each one a little different. So, because I figure each one has a unique attribute that makes them stand out. Now, Kiril it's correct. He serves Strahd. And you might be asking, why would Strahd bother to help Kiril and give him these dire wolves and help him take over the pack? Strahd wants the Worg destroyed. Strahd knows that the Worg has avoided the Great War, avoided humans, but he knows the Worg are fiercely loyal to the Fae, right? And even though he's kind of dispensed with the Fae at this point, if the Fae ever return to power, the Worg will come to the Fae's side. And the last thing Strahd needs is to deal with another enemy. So if he can just give some dire wolves and help Kiril out with his problem with his werewolf clan, he can ask Kiril, you need to go solve my problem and get rid of the wargs. Hunt and find those wargs, kill them, and I will always support your clan. So Kiril has a secret mission of finding the wargs and killing off the wargs. Now, Kiril is a bully. He is actually a coward. You wouldn't know this, but he's a bully. So he's only strong when he has his pack around him, or in this case, he has his two dire wolves. And we'll go through a little bit of that when we get to the wolf den and we talk about Kiril some more. Now, Kiril's mate is Bianca, and she's very interesting. She is actually the strongest of all of the werewolves. She's got 90 hit points, 18 strength. And everybody kind of knows that Kiril would never have become the leader of the clan if it wasn't for his mate Bianca. Now, Bianca is becoming kind of frustrated and resentful of Kiril. Number one, she doesn't agree with this whole hunting children thing at all. She finds it kind of disgusting and beneath them. The other thing is, she hates the fact that behind her back, Kiril made a pact with Strahd. She secretly does not like Strahd. She wants nothing to do with Strahd. So that her mate now with these children and making a pact with Strahd has really pissed her off. But there's one thing that's really made Bianca pissed off. It is the unspoken tradition that when the leader of the clan or the leader of the pack goes out on a hunt, the mate rules the roost. So when Kiril's out hunting or doing whatever he's doing, Bianca should be ruling the entire clan. Kiril doesn't do that. Kiril asks his friend Lars, hey, I'm going out. You're in charge of the clan. This is totally disrespectful to his mate. So Bianca, everybody knows she's the strongest, and she's getting very resentful of Kiril. He's doing this stuff for the children. He's made a deal with Strahd, and he's making Lars his buddy in charge when he goes out. It's like, dude, you're just disrespecting me. You're just respecting me as your mate, and then you're just respecting me as the most powerful werewolf in the clan. So she can be persuaded to betray Kiril under the right conditions, right? So that's Bianca. The next one we have is Lars. Lars is Kiril's strongest ally, and he is the greatest hunter of the entire clan. He moves an extra 10 feet of movement. He has a higher dexterity. And Lars has been sent out repeatedly by Kiril to find this warg den. So Lars is always out on a mission looking for the warg den and to kill any warg that he finds. And he's been instructed by Kiril to do so. Nobody but Kiril knows that Strahd is the one that's made this order. Lars just thinks it's Kiril doing this. Now, Lars is fiercely loyal to Kiril as his best friend. He will die for Kiril. That's Lars. Next up is Lars's mate. is Davanka. Davanka is the leader of all the guards. So the watch rotations, the guards of the den and the clan, that is her duty. She's always on guard duty. She is Lars's mate. She is fiercely loyal to Lars. She loves Lars. In her mind, Lars can do no wrong. And if Lars is loyal to Kiril, then she's loyal to Kiril. So whatever Lars says, she will follow, and she will be with Lars until the end of days. Last up in Kiril's clan is Aziana. Now, she's interesting because Aziana, it was her mate that White Claw killed. And she's not really pissed off at White Claw so much, but at this fracture and the whole thing that's kind of fallen apart with the clan. In fact, she's more mad at her mate to challenge White Claw and then subsequently die, and then she's mad at White Claw. I mean, at some point, she kind of agrees with White Claw. We shouldn't be killing children. What's going on? Not because she's upset about the killing the children. She doesn't want the humans and the wolf hunters to come hunt them. That's what she's really concerned about, as them being hunted. She's also Bianca's best friend. So she's always hanging out with Bianca. Let's talk about Emil's pack. So we have Emil here. He is not here. As per Lunch Break Heroes video, Emil's being held in the tower at Zuleika Pass. And when we get to Zuleika Pass, we'll learn all about why he's being held there. There's a whole other storyline and quest line to that. So that is where he is. But he is pretty strong, 17 strength. He's got 80 hit points. But that is where he is located. The players do find him. Now, Emil's mate is probably one of the most interesting of all of the werewolves because she was a human all the way up into being a teenager. She was a human daughter of Strahd and Zella. Strahd was a famous wolf hunter, and Zella, her mother, they both own Strahd's leathers goods in the Vallaki town square. Strahd stopped wolf hunting after his daughter Zuleika turned into a werewolf. So when she was very young, a teenager, she was bit by a werewolf. She was cursed with lycanthropy. Eventually, she became a permanent werewolf, and she lives with the clan, and her mate is Emil. Now, Zuleika's parents, Strahd, stopped being a wolf hunter because he was afraid one day, I might have to kill a werewolf when I'm wolf hunting, and it might be my daughter, or it might be her mate, Emil. So he stopped becoming a wolf hunter and started just running Strahd's leather goods shop in there. And he keeps track with the wolf hunters what's going on in the werewolves, secretly knowing that his daughter is one. Nobody knows in Vallaki. They would never let anybody know that their daughter's a werewolf. Now, Strahd and Zella, Zuleika's mom, once a year would meet up during the day while Zuleika and Emil are in human form during either the summer solstice or spring equinox. It's kind of a family reunion out in the forest. They would come to neutral grounds. They still love their daughter. They respect Emil, who's taking care of her. They understand their ways, but they still love their daughter. And so they would have this, once a year kind of family reunion out in the woods to see each other again because, they're still a family. Unfortunately, Zuleika and Emil didn't show up at the last reunion, so Strahd and Zella are worried. And that's obviously what's happened with Kiril and Emil's disappearance and everything like that. Now, a lot of people in the clan have shunned her because she was Emil's mate. And they figure if anybody's to go next under Kiril's rule, it'll be Zuleika, right? So they kind of shun her. They don't want any repercussions from Kiril, right? Now, secretly, Bianca won't let anything happen to Zuleika. Zuleika doesn't know this, but Bianca's looking out for her. Bianca's getting a little pissed at Kiril, obviously, that we talked about, but she doesn't want anything happening to anybody else in the werewolf clan at all. And she's becoming more and more protective of the other werewolves from Kiril's kind of stupidity. Next up, we have Wensencia, and she's known as the Protector. She's an older female werewolf. She's horrified of what Kiril is doing, but with Emil gone, she's fearful of Strahd. she's older, and so she's become like this protective mother. She's saying, look, I hate what's going on. I hate this whole children thing, but no one's stepping up. And so she's taken on this motherly role to protect the children that are being converted into werewolves and kind of guiding them into being werewolves. She doesn't approve of it, but if nobody steps up and does it, nobody will. So she's kind of taking on this role that she hates doing, but she's doing it anyway. And if she sees the opportunity to escape with the child werewolf and get out of the clan, she will. But she's afraid if she does, Kiril will hunt her down. I see her as almost like kind of a Schindler's List kind of character, right? She's living among this horrible atrocity, but doing whatever she can to protect these children in this atrocity, but there's little that she can do. So she does her best that she can, and if she can escape, she will. Now, if Emil comes back or if Kiril's killed and the clan reverts back to its old ways, she'll be very happy and she'll go ahead and stay. Now, the child that she's protecting, by the way, this child that she's protecting, anything happens to her, she will protect that child with her life. And the child that she's protecting is Kellen. Kellen I made as a teenage girl. Now, she's been bitten, she's cursed, but she hasn't gone through the Taming Ritual, which we'll cover yet. So she's cursed, and she has no control over her werewolf ability when she does turn into a werewolf. She only has 20 hit points. If the players do find her, they can reverse that werewolf curse on her if they so desire to, but it will run its course after a period of time, as it does with all werewolves. Last but not least, we have Skennis, and Skennis is an interesting character. Skennis used to be, a long, long time ago, the leader of the clan before Kiril. Skennis is also the father of Emil, and his mate was Whiteclaw. So when Whiteclaw was exiled, and he was kind of shocked and horrified and disappointed that his mate did what she did, he realized for him it was the emotional breaking point. He left the clan. He moved into a cabin in the woods, disgusted and horrified about what's become about the clan. And now his son is missing and Kiril's back. And so he's reached out to the Worg, begged them for help. He's kind of old. He thinks it's over for the clan. Things are only going to get worse. So he's kind of living in solitude in this cabin. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we get to that encounter. He is neutral, and he will befriend the party if the party find him living in the cabin in the woods. Last but not least, we have the Worg, and the leader of the Worg is Gimrock. And Gimrock is pretty powerful. He's got 120 hit points, armor class 17, strength 18, dexterity 14, constitution 18. He's very knowledgeable. Now, Worgs, unlike werewolf, are always in Worg form. They're giant wolves, and they speak common. And they speak Worg as well. They have resistance to lightning, non-magical physical damage, and thunder. Now, Gimrock has no love for Strahd, and he's fiercely loyal to the Fae. And so he will not involve himself with humans, and he will not involve himself with Strahd, but he would love to see Kiril removed. He sees Kiril as a huge problem because not only what he's doing is kind of disgusting and wrong, from what he's been trained. Remember, the Worg took the werewolf in and told him how to live off the land, and then the werewolf joined with Strahd. But what Gimrock is truly fearful of is these kidnapped children is going to bring these wolf hunters. And when these wolf hunters come, they may not stop with the werewolves. They might start attacking the Worg as well. So Kiril's action is bringing unwanted attention both to the Worg as well. Skennis has asked for aid, but now Gimrock is conflicted because Kiril's returned with the dire wolves, which implies Strahd's involved, and he wants nothing to do with Strahd because Gimrock is protective of his clan first. He's going to honor the Fae, meaning that we won't get involved in human returns, but he certainly doesn't want the wrath of Strahd to come down upon him. Now, he might be able to be convinced at some point that, well, Kiril showed back up with dire wolves. Chances are Kiril is already involved with Strahd, which means Strahd's probably trying to hunt us down. So there you have the Wolf Clan. You have all the major NPCs. You got some ideas on how to roleplay all of them. Let's talk about lycanthropy itself. Now, lycanthropy in Barovia works a little bit differently. There's cursed or inherited lycanthropy. They both operate the same, except for cursed, you can be cured. And if you've inherited or the curse has run its course, you can't be, and the only way to deal with it is go through this ritual called the taming, which we'll talk about. Now, again, if you follow the campaign prep video, there's a player hook, the lycanthropy, where one of your players can be either cursed or inherited. They have to, in Barovia, they have their own personal story and quest line to try to deal with this. And this might be a reason to get them to the wolf den to solve this problem, which would be a really cool player hook, that the player is slowly going through this physical change. Now, the NPCs that know something or everything about lycanthropy, it's really up to you about the details they know and share. The truth, not just the legend, but true stuff, are the following. Obviously, Darovich, the wolf hunter in Kresk, Strahd and Zella, we talked about. They're the parents of Zuleika. Anya and Sonia, which are the sisters, they're the herbalists in the two villages. They're going to play an instrumental part in one of the removals of the curse. Skennis, the old werewolf living in the cabin. Obviously, the abbot, Madame Ava, any of the werewolf NPCs, Gimrock, the leader of the Worg, and of course Strahd. So these people all have detailed knowledge of some sort or the other, a lot or a little, about lycanthropy and some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about here, as well as the legends and the lore of the werewolf. So let's talk about first of all, let's talk about becoming cursed. How does a player become cursed? Or any creature. Any creature that's bitten by a werewolf must roll a constitution save of DC 14 to determine if the bite has caused the curse of lycanthropy. Now, you don't want to tell, one of the things about lycanthropy is whatever you do, do not share the DCs, the difficulty checks, and do not share what exactly is happening. What's really fun about lycanthropy in Curse of Strahd is let the players discover it through the experiences the players have. So if players get bit, say, hey, can you roll a constitution save? Don't say anything. If they fail, they fail. If they succeed, they succeed. But you don't let them know. You don't let them know what the DC is. Don't let them know. Just say, okay. You don't inform the player what's about to happen. Now, if they are cursed, every single night, they're going to roll a constitution save, right? It's going to start at DC 8. And you're saying, no, just roll a constitution save for me, for the player that's cursed. What you're doing is you're determining if the curse has run its course and they become a permanent werewolf and they can no longer be cured. It's called checking to see if the curse has run its course. Now, the first DC check on the first night is DC 8. And if they fail it, you're going to roll a 1d6 plus 4. And that's going to tell you with between 5 and 10 days, that curse is going to run its course and that player is going to be permanently a werewolf and will not be able to be cured. They're going to have permanent lycanthropy. You're not going to let the players know this though, right? So the first night it's going to be DC 8. The next night it's going to be DC 9. The next night DC 10. So every night they're going to roll this to see if the curse has run its course. And if they fail, you're going to roll that 1d6 plus 4. Now, what's going to happen is if they fail on that first night, you're going to say, you know what, your eyes are growing darker. Your hair on your arms and your body hair is growing thicker. Something has permanently begun to change. Now, if they meet with Anya or Sonia or Madame Ava or somebody that knows about lycanthropy, who we talked about, they're going to say, if you've been cursed with lycanthropy, it looks like it's about to run its course, and anywhere between 5 to 10 days, you're going to no longer be curable. Perhaps you can have a test that maybe Anya or Sonia can perform to tell you how many more days you have before it's no longer cursed, right? Before you can no longer be cured. So don't tell them what the DCs are. Don't tell them why you're rolling. None of those things. Now let's talk about the effects of the curse. The first time the player gets infected, they get bitten. And this whole process we're talking about, we call it a curse, but it's really like an infection. So the infection is slowly spreading through the body. And that's why you're doing these constitution checks. How long can they survive before the curse runs its course and they permanently become a werewolf that there's no cure at all? Now, what happens on that first night, the player's bitten, The player, don't tell them that they have lycanthropy. Explain it through the experience. You're going to say, you're trying to take a long rest, but you're not able to rest. You have this surging pain. You feel that your muscles are kind of tearing apart at the sinew and at the cartilage, and your bones are becoming harder. And if you've ever seen the movie American Werewolf in London, you should see it, because there's this great scene where he goes through the transformation for the first time. His fingers get longer and the hairs start growing. His face gets elongated, and through that he goes through this metamorphic change. It's a great scene in the movie. I imagine that happening the first time. So you're describing this physical change the first time they're turning into a werewolf. Now, automatically, during this process, their strength is going to go to 18. So if their strength is 12, 14, 15, 16, it's going to go to 18. If it's already at 18 or higher, it remains at 18. However, the player is going to suffer 1d6 of necrotic damage the first time they turn into a werewolf, because they're going through all this pain, right? Their body and their whole body is changing. They're going through this physical change of becoming a werewolf. They've gathered the strength, so they're going to take that 1d6 damage, and they're going to become a werewolf. Now, werewolves in Barovia are immune to non-magical and non-silver damage, but I changed the mechanic because it always bothered me, and Mandy Mod wrote about this too, and I felt the same way. You stab a werewolf with a sword and they're immune to it? Oh, come on. No. You stab them with a sword, it cuts the flesh, they bleed. They're going to be resistant. So all werewolves are resistant to non-magical and non-silver damage. They take the damage. And to represent the immunity to this, that at each of their turns, they heal 1d6, heal back 1d6 from enemy damage that's caused by non-magical or non-silvered weapons. So, you stab a werewolf with a knife and they take, like say 3 damage. During the werewolf's turn, they automatically roll 1d6 and they heal 1d6 worth of hit points from any damage taken from non-magical or non-silvered weapons. So that's how I imagine that immunity actually works. Within 24 hours, any damage from non-magical, non-silver weapons will heal them. So it is possible to kill a werewolf extremely hard and difficult with non-magical, non-silver weapons. I mean, you're going to have to be pounding on that werewolf a lot, and he's going to be healing every turn. So it is possible, but it's super, super hard to do. So they have resistance because they constantly heal back up from it. That's how this whole immunity thing works. They have advantage on smell and hearing skill checks when in werewolf form. They have 60 feet of dark vision while in werewolf form. And they have this tracking communication. They can track both werewolves and normal wolves by scent. They can also recognize anyone in human form that has lycanthropy, and it doesn't matter what lycanthropy it is. It could be were-raven, were-jackal, werewolf, any type of lycanthropy. And they see another human in human form, they go, oh, they have lycanthropy. They might not know it's a werewolf or a were-raven, but they'll realize by looking at another human they have lycanthropy. What are the negatives to being cursed? Number one is you lose control every evening that there is a moon. The dungeon master takes over the player character, you convert into a werewolf, and you lose full control. The werewolf goes off and starts hunting as the DM takes control, as the DM sees fit. The other thing is resting at night. You gain no benefits, 0 benefits from a short or long rest at night because you're being converted into a werewolf and the DM's taking control. So typically werewolves take short rests and long rests during the daytime. Now, there's only one night where a player character that's cursed with lycanthropy that can rest, and that's on the new moon. When there's no moon out, the PC can rest that night, take a long rest or short rest. If the PC does not get a long rest, within 3 days, they're going to suffer 1 level of exhaustion. In addition, one of the things you might want to think about is if the player character wants to keep in control and not go running off and let the dungeon master take his player character in werewolf form and go off and get into trouble, if you have silvered manacles or shackles and you bind the feet and hands, The werewolf can't hurt himself, but can't run away and do anything. It can't break the silver manacles. So if you use shackles or manacles to bind the hands and the feet, the werewolf won't go to sleep. He'll turn into a werewolf, but he won't be able to go anywhere, right? So that would be one way to safely bind the werewolf. If you put any ropes or chains, they'll be able to break them, and they'll be able to set themselves free. Okay, so we talked about the effects. We talked about becoming a werewolf, removing the curse. Remember, you can only remove the curse off of a person that hasn't inherited it or hasn't had the curse run its course and they become a permanent werewolf. There's only 3 ways to remove the curse. The first one is the Greater Restoration spell, only by those that know how to remove the Barovian Lycanthropy curse. This means even if a player character gets the restoration spell, Greater Restoration spell, by the way, doesn't mean they can automatically go, boom, cast Greater Restoration, you're cured. One of the things that always bothers me is when players get one of these spells, they just use it as a get out of jail free card. Up, remove curse. Up, Greater Restoration. Up, it's just like this free kind of like get out of jail free card. Doesn't work that way here in Barovia. You got to know how to specifically use Greater Restoration to remove the curse of lycanthropy. And guess what? There's only 2 people in Barovia that can. And there are 2 people that aren't going to be keen on just helping you out. And that's the Abbot and Strahd. Those are the only 2 people that can use Greater Restoration spell to remove this curse. And that means they're going to want a favor from you. And this leads to some very possibly dark and fun role-playing where they'll either have to cut a deal with Strahd or the Abbot to use this Greater Restoration spell just to quickly get rid of this curse. That's it. Now, you may, as a dungeon master, say, well, I'm going to let the player learn how to use Greater Restoration spell, and that's great. Maybe you have some requirements. Maybe they have to go on a quest, or they have to figure it out, or you might make some DC check to make it very difficult, or you could have some other NPCs that know this particular spell. I'd be very careful in doing this, though, because we want to. This is Gothic Horror. This is a deadly game. We want to make this extremely difficult. And Greater Restoration spell is just a really easy way to get rid of it. So my recommendation is be very careful if you make it other than Strahd or the Abbot. I like to make it Strahd or the Abbot because it encourages difficult decision making. It encourages epic role-playing with moral ambiguity and shades of gray. I've got to cut a deal with Strahd to get rid of this curse. I mean, those are the kinds of moments that really make Curse of Strahd special. So, yes, it's a really easy spell. It gets rid of it very quickly, but you've got to, negotiate your way to that. The second way to do it is called the Blood of the Werewolf. You need to find the werewolf that bit the player character that gave them the curse of lycanthropy. And you have to make sure that heart is intact. And you got to take the heart and blood. And what you're going to use is you're going to make a concoction to remove the curse. Now, you can only do this under a new moon. So it needs to be the heart and blood from the werewolf that bit the player that caused the curse. And you boil that heart and blood under a new moon. Why a new moon? It's the only time they can't turn into a werewolf. And so the blood in the heart of this dead werewolf, right? This is the time to boil it and to drink it. Because if the player drinks it from the cursed werewolf, this is the time that the blood, it's the only time that the blood at night is reversed its effects. The player can't turn into a werewolf on that night. The player that's infected is going to drink this under the new moon that night. The PC rolls a Constitution saving check, DC 14. If they're successful, they fall asleep. They wake up the next morning, they're fully cured. They lose all the werewolf benefits, but they maintain that strength of 18, that huge, cool benefit. However, they drink this concoction, and if they fail, the PC is going to get violently sick for 1d4 plus 2 days. That's a minimum of 3, maximum of 6 days. And they'll remain a werewolf until it's run its course. And after it's run its course, after 3 to 6 days, they will be cured. However, every single evening, they're going to have to roll a Constitution save, and it's very low. It's only a DC 8. But if they fail to save, they're going to lose 1 strength permanently. So at the end of the 1d4 plus 2, that would be 3 to 6 days, the curse is gone. Now, you've got the benefit of, the player's getting the benefit of that plus 18. They're getting 18 strength. If they fail, it's a possibility. I mean, worst case scenario, you fail the DC 14 check. And then you rolled the maximum numbers of days, 1d4 plus 2. You rolled 6 days. And that means you're going to have to roll DC 8 every single night for 6 days before the curse is gone. It's possible, however improbable, that you're going to lose six health. I mean, if you have 6 days and you fail 6 DC 8 Constitution saves, you could lose 6 strength. You could go from an 18 down to a 12. This is the risk of this, and everything should have a risk in Curse of Strahd. So it's possible to go back from an 18 down to a 12 strength. You get sick, and now you have to do this. I imagine that you've drinking this thing and it's trying to get rid of the curse, and your body's fighting it, and over those days, and you could slowly lose and tick off strength. The third method is the Belladonna root treatment, and those that know about lycanthropy. Oh, by the way. Anybody that knows about lycanthropy knows about how to get rid of the curse through the blood of the werewolf. They can tell the players, find the werewolf that bit you, kill him, boil the heart in the blood under the new moon, drink it, and it might get rid of the curse, but it might cause some lasting effects on the player as well. The Belladonna root treatment, anybody that knows about lycanthropy knows about it, but there's only 2 NPCs in the entire game that can make this, and that is Anya in Vallaki, the herbalist in Vallaki, and Sonia, her sister, that lives in Kresk. And if you go and ask them for it, they're going to recognize right away. They know everything there is about lycanthropy. They're going to recognize right away that one of the players has the curse of lycanthropy. And they will be also able to recognize if the players failed that DC check and the curse has run its course. And they could probably even say, I can do a test and tell you how many days you have left before you won't be able to be cured, right? You could, definitely Sonia and Anya would know how to do that. Now, if they ask for it, they're going to tell you want to instill some fear. This Belladonna root treatment is hard to make. I need to get the ingredients. And taking it has great risks. The player could die, right, taking this treatment. Very possible. And it's very possible that the player could... it doesn't work. The player will survive, it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, they won't be able to do it again. So this is how this works. Sonia or Anya are going to ask the player, you need to get me the ingredients. Now, one of the ingredients should definitely be the healing waters from the spring in Kresk. This is a great way to introduce the Markovia, St. Markovia storyline, the spring, the Sergei storyline into it. It's the healing waters. Should definitely be part of this Belladonna root treatment. And then you could figure out some of your own ingredients that you may want to include in there, and maybe have them go on a quest to get all those ingredients. The next thing, as soon as they get all the ingredients, Sonia or Anya, you're going to roll a 1d4 plus 1 for Sonia and Anya, and that's going to determine the number of doses the players is going to have to take. They have to take all the doses. So it's going to be between 2 to 5 doses, minimum of 2. Now, the player, when they take the first dose, they're going to roll a Constitution check of DC 14. If they fail it, they're going to take 1d4 reduction to their strength, and they're not going to be able to take the next concoction for 24 hours. So if they fail that DC 14, it's a 1d4 reduction in strength. Each subsequent dose, remember they have to take 2, possibly up to 5. Each subsequent dose, they're going to roll a Constitution save of DC 12. It's 2 less. However, if they fail those subsequent doses, they're going to lose 2d4 worth of strength, and every time they fail, they're going to have to wait another 24 hours for another dose. Now, all the strength returns all the way back up to 18 or higher after they take all the doses and after they have a long rest, and they're going to be cured. However, if their strength is reduced to 0, the player character is now paralyzed and unconscious and must roll a death save once every 24 hours. Now, during the death save, if they are successful in one of the death saves, they're going to restore 1 hit point, right? And at that point, the concoctions worked, and they can be restored to full health. And once they're restored to full health, all their strength returns. Now, during the death saves, nothing else is going to work. The player needs to roll the death save. So if another player is trying to use another spell or is trying to heal, if they do anything to interfere, a healing spell, anything like that during the death save, anything, right, the process stops. They might be able to heal the player, save them from death, but the process stops. The Belladonna root process stops. Right, the Belladonna root treatment the player needs to go through this treatment. The treatment is going and working, and the player either needs to make the death save or is, interfered with by the other players. That's the risk if this does happen. Now, there is an antitoxin that Anya and Sonia will make at the same time and give to the player and saying, if his strength is reduced to 0, if he is paralyzed, if he is trying to survive, and you're fearful that he won't survive, or she won't survive, given the antitoxin, it will stop the Belladonna root treatment. They will survive. They won't have to make any more death saves. They'll have 1 hit point. They'll be okay, and you can heal them up. However, they're becoming immune to the Belladonna treatment. You're not going to be able to use it again. So the Belladonna treatment only works once if you use an antitoxin. If they stop the treatment when they're going through these death saves, if a player is trying to heal them or does anything like that, they can no longer lose the treatment. The treatment has to run its course, no matter what. If the player dies, the player dies. If the player survives and is cured. This makes the Belladonna root treatment, again, a risky treatment. There's a low chance a player will die. Somebody's going to interfere with that. But interfering with that treatment means the treatment's no longer effective. They become immune to it. And that means that then they have to use one of the other 2 treatments, restoration spell or the blood of the werewolf. Otherwise, they're permanently going to become a werewolf. One of the things about this, curse running its course is I want to put a timing element. I want to put some stress and pressure on it. The players need to deal with this. It's not like they're cursed and they can just remove curse. Remove curse, by the way, does not work at all on Barovian Lycanthropy. So it's serious. This is a serious shit, it's not easy to get rid of. Let's talk about inherited lycanthropy, as well as it's the same thing as if a cursed lycanthropy has run its course and you've become a permanent werewolf. So inherited or a permanent werewolf, it's run its course, it's the same thing. The only thing you can do at this point is go through the ritual called the taming. And remember, years ago, centuries ago, thousands of years ago, the Worg taught the werewolf how to do this ritual so that they can control the werewolf within. Now, the only people that can do the taming ritual is the people that have inherited lycanthropy or those that are cursed, in which it's run its course and they become a permanent werewolf. So you have to be a permanent werewolf to go through this process for it to happen. That's why Wensencia, the protector, the elderly protector, is protecting the child. They have to let the curse run its course before they give them the taming ritual. So if you have a curse, you have to let it run its course before you can take the taming ritual. Now, the only people that can perform this ritual is the leaders of the pack and the leaders of the clan, because they've been taught it. It's a very sacred ritual. Kiril knows it, Emil knows it, Skennis knows it, and Gimrock are the only 4 people that actually know how to perform this exactly. Now, what does the taming ritual allow you as a werewolf to do? Number 1, under any moon, you can become a werewolf on command and be in full control of your faculties. You can only become a werewolf once, and once you transform into a werewolf, and you can decide to do that or not. You can remain in human form on any night of a moon except for a full moon, or you can decide during the night, if there's a moon, convert into a werewolf. And when you're in a werewolf, you have full control over your faculties. Now, when you do convert into a werewolf, you lose your. Most of the werewolves wear leather armor with compression straps on it. So because they change, they can wear their leather armor. But everything else that you carry, you go to natural werewolf form. You're not going to be using swords or knife. You're going to be fighting as a werewolf, and the only thing that you'll have on, it'll drop all your gear. The only thing that you'll have on you will be usually that if you have that leather armor that's made, made that has like compression straps on it that would constrict and expand with you as you go through this metamorphosis. That's it, is the leather armor. And so you can convert to werewolf form on command. You have to wait till daybreak to convert back to human. And in a werewolf form, you can't use any weapons other than your being a werewolf. Now, on a full moon, you still are automatically going to convert to a werewolf. You can't control it. You can't not become a werewolf, but you have full control over being a werewolf. And the only time you cannot become a werewolf is on the night of the new moon. So you automatically convert into a werewolf on full moons and you have control, or on any night there is a moon, you can decide to become a werewolf and have full control. And on new moon, you can't. So that's pretty much what the Taming Ritual allows you to do. And otherwise, you have no control. You're going to turn into a werewolf every night and the DM's going to take over for you. So you're going to want to do this. Now, it is possible if Kiril, Emil, Skennis, and Gimrock aren't available, that another werewolf who's gone through the Taming Ritual can perform it, but you're going to add a +4 to everything to the ritual to make it very difficult if it's not one of these leaders, because these people are going to try to remember it and they're not going to do it exactly correctly. So what does the ritual include? Well, the player is going to be either caged or chained, and a blood sacrifice needs to be made. The blood sacrifice of the creature has to be killed by the PC. The PC that's going to go through the ritual has to kill the creature themselves. And then there's a blood sacrifice. The person that's performing the ritual is going to say some incantations over the blood, and then the player is going to be fed the blood. And they're going to have to roll a constitution save to see if they succeeded in the Taming Ritual. They could fail and it doesn't work. Now, here's the crazy part. The DC and all the things that happen to the failure depends on the type of sacrifice they make. And I wanted to introduce some serious moral dilemma here, right? I didn't want to make this something that's like, oh, I'm just going to kill an animal and use the blood, and try to game their way through this. This is a moral decision. And there's 4 different levels that are going to determine the DC of surviving, not surviving, but the Taming Ritual being successful. So let's talk about those. If they go out and sacrifice, if the PC who has lycanthropy finds a small animal, a bunny, a rodent, a small bird, and uses that as their sacrifice, the Constitution save is going to be a DC 20. It's going to be hard, right? And if they fail it, they're going to lose 4 strength for 1d8 plus 2 days. They're going to take 1d8 plus 2 necrotic damage, and they're going to have to wait 1d8 plus 2 hours before attempting it again and having to get another sacrifice. It's very difficult, but not impossible, to use a bunny or a bird or a rodent or a squirrel as a blood sacrifice for the Taming Ritual, but it's low probability of being successful, and if you're not successful, well, you're going to lose a lot of strength for possibly a lot of days. And this stacks, so if you do it again and you fail again, you're going to have 8 strength down, right? You can decide to use a domesticated animal, a cow, a horse, or a dog, and it's going to lower the DC from 20 down to 18. You're going to in a failure, only lose 3 strength for 1d6 plus 2 days, suffer 1d6 plus 2 necrotic, and have to wait 1d6 plus 2 hours before having to find another sacrifice and doing it again. What most werewolves do is they use a wild beast, usually a dire wolf or a creature worthy of a tough fight. Remember, this is a one-on-one fight. The PC needs to kill the creature themselves. Depending on the PC level, that's up to you. This takes Constitution save down to DC 14, considerably lower. And if they fail, they only lose 2 strength for 1d4 days plus 2 days. They suffer 1d4 plus 2 necrotic damage and have to wait 1d4 plus 2, anywhere from 3 to 6 hours before they can do it again. This is what most werewolves do, and it's seen by most werewolves this is how it should be done. There is one final one, and this is where it gets morally black. If you take a human sacrifice, and remember, you have to kill the human yourself, and then you have to go through the ritual and drink the human blood, the Constitution save is very low. It's DC 10. And if you fail, you only lose 1 strength for 1d2 days, suffer 1d2 necrotic damage, and have to wait 1d2 hours if it doesn't work before you make another sacrifice and do it again. Now this stacks. And I wanted to put this in there to make it easier for humans with consequences being significantly less, because you want to have this as a moral dilemma the players have to decide. Now, whenever the player survives the Taming Ritual, it changes their alignment to chaotic neutral. And the reason it's chaotic neutral, it's chaotic because living a life of a werewolf is chaotic. You're changing forms. It's neutral because you, as the player, make the decision the kind of life as a werewolf you want to live. Do you want to live under the live and let live guidance of the Worg and be loyal to the Fae and appreciate this is part of nature's way? Or do you want to be more like Kiril and do kind of despicable things? So you're going to become chaotic neutral. Your neutralness can go to evil or good depending on how you live the life of a werewolf, but your alignment will initially become chaotic neutral. And obviously, players have some serious thinking to do when they go through this Taming Ritual, which sacrifice they want to make. They'll be making the sacrifice in front of the Mother Night statue, and we'll cover that when we get to the ritual room. Okay, well, that covers the background of the werewolves. We know where they came from. We know the Worg relationship, how the werewolves have aligned with Strahd during the Great War, about where the silver weapons came from. We know about the clan right now and their alignment again with Strahd and the dire wolves, and the werewolves now trying to hunt down the Worg, who are allied with the Fae. And you understand how lycanthropy works. Well, let's talk about the session itself and all the locations. And I've added some new locations here. The first one we've added here is the forest crossroads. And this is the way up to the mountain, to the cave on the mountain. And this is an important location because this is a crossroad, and the decision the players make here is going to be a domino effect. It will affect everything else that happens in these sessions in the Werewolf Den. And I'll explain to you why. So at the forest crossroads here, there is a large path that goes this way to the left that goes northwest up into the mountains above the tree line and up to the mountains where the den is. And if the players do a nature check, DC 10, they're going to see fresh wolf prints leading to the left to the northwest up above the tree line. There's a small path over here that's leading to the northeast, and this leads into a clearing on the outside of the woods. In fact, the players might even see a little bit of smoke billowing above the trees over there. There's no marks in the path. There's some fresh snow there. Doesn't look like anybody's going down this path for some time. Now, the small path leads to the cabin in the woods, and the large path leads to the forest encounter on their way to the wolf den. The decision the players make at this point, which path to take, will have great impact in their decision-making ability, because the information they're going to have is going to be greatly increased by the knowledge they have by going to the cabin first. And we're going to do that here. So if the players decide to go down the small path to the cabin in the woods, you're going to come up to this Theater of the Mind scene here. This is another gorgeous map by James RPG Art here. Again, if you want the animated one, it's available on James RPG Art's Patreon. There's a link down below. This is the cabin where Skennis lives. Skennis, remember, his mate was White Claw, who did that horrific act against another werewolf. He found it reprehensible. He left the clan. He saw the clan going downhill. He's been pleading with the Worg to get rid of Kiril. And he's moved to this cabin in the woods. This is also the wolf hunter that's referred to by Darovich, about a wolf hunter living out in the woods who knows everything there is about werewolves. What's really interesting, and I think this is a fabulous role-playing, and I just imagine this in my head, you have this old wolf hunter in Kresk Darovich. You know, he's got the bum leg. His wife's been killed by werewolves. He's been a werewolf hunter all his life. He runs a little Darovich's inn where you can stay in Kresk. His closest friend is Skennis. He comes out and visits Skennis, probably once a week or so, comes up to the cabin, probably share a couple drinks. He probably brings Skennis a couple of supplies there, some candles or whatever Skennis might need. And he thinks Skennis is another old wolf hunter. These are two old wolf hunters. But Skennis has this great secret. He is actually a werewolf. And he's befriended Darvich, and he can't find it in his heart to tell Darvich the truth. I'm actually a fucking werewolf. And by the way, it was my mate Wolfclaws that's given Kresk a hard time. They both know a lot about wolves. They both know a lot about wolf hunting. They know a lot about hunting. I mean, Skennis hunts as a werewolf, obviously. So they have this really kind of beautiful, unique friendship, except for Skennis can't tell him the truth. I just imagine that would be some cool, really cool story and role-playing scenes. So the players approach, they see this old cabin. The reasons it's on stilts is this area gets heavy amounts of snow drifts. And then in the springtime, the thaw melt up here is so heavy when it thaws, this area turns into a very marshy area. So the cabin's built on stilts to avoid the snow drifts. Obviously, the marsh during the spring when everything thaws and the mountain spring water and rivers start to flow pretty heavily. The players, Skennis is very aloof. He's a werewolf. He doesn't know if these players are wolf hunters or in league with Strahd or whatever. They have to earn his trust first. And the way they earn his trust is if they mention Darvich, he knows Darvich, obviously. I just mentioned that. If they mention Scran or Zella, he knows them. And so there's a good role-playing element here. And when Skennis begins to trust the players, he's going to say this to them. I'm going to do some crappy role-playing here, but this is basically what he's going to say. He's going to go, my son Emil was the leader of the Werewolf Clan. He's also Zuleika's mate. He's recently disappeared. I fear it was at the hands of Kiril, who now leads the clan, and Kiril has taken to dark ways, kidnapping human children, feeding on their flesh. He has disgraced the clan, even our god, Mother Night. The statue is now drenched in human blood of children. He's disgusted by this, obviously. I've attempted to reach out to the Worg, once allies of the werewolves, but the Worg fear the werewolves are now in league with Strahd. Find my son, remove Kiril from power in these dark ways, and you shall have my allegiance and that of the entire clan. Seek out Gimrock, the leader of the Worg, convince him to aid you. He has no love for Strahd, but he also does not trust outsiders. He lives by a code, live and let live. Now, you can expand on this. This just gives you a baseline to run by, but you can share with the players about White Claw, the story about what happened. I mean, you have all this great information and stories of what happened in the clan that Skennis can share with the players about White Claw, about Zuleika, things he might know or suspect about the other NPCs, other werewolves living in the clan. So he has a lot of information to share with the players. One thing he will definitely tell the players is that there's a lookout post above the cave entrance, up the cliffs. And it's a secret entrance into the wolf den. They got to be careful because sometimes there's a werewolf up there patrolling, as a lookout. But there would be a way to secretly enter into the wolf den from the top. He'll share that with them. Now, this opens up a couple of quest lines. Obviously, finding his son Emil. As I mentioned, Emil's in Zuleika Pass in the tower. That's going to be covered in the Zuleika Pass video. And remove Kiril as the leader. Find someone else to be the leader of the clan. It could be Zuleika, perhaps it's even Bianca would be a good leader of the clan, probably a better leader than anybody. And then when they return to their old ways, if they return to their own ways and you remove Kiril, Skennis will return to the clan, and he will perform the Taming Ritual on anyone that has lycanthropy, anyone that's helped them return to the old ways. Skennis will also ally with the party, and he will be able to convince the Wolf Den to revolt against Strahd and Ravenloft should the need occur. Now, recently I ran a mini game session where each player took on a role of a general of an army, and I had this big battle fought out between the armies of Ravenloft, a bunch of undead and stuff, versus the army that included the werewolves, it included the ravens, it included the revenants, and each player took on an army, and we had this mini war game fighting outside the Battle of Ravenloft. It was really cool, and I'm going to be incorporating that into a module. This would be a way to win over the werewolves to join in that battle. So how do you get the werewolves to join the battle to march on Ravenloft? Help Skennis get rid of Kiril and return the werewolf clan to its old ways. And now you've got an ally on a march against Ravenloft, on the battle for Ravenloft. So you have a lot of, what's really important, this is a very important role-playing counter. This is an info dump because the players are going to have information now as they head up to the wolf den, and they got to go through that snowy werewolf encounter on the way to the wolf den, and now they're going to be armed with information to make a decision. So let's go to that scene. That's the next scene here. This is if they took the large path with the wolf tracks, or they leave. They're going to have to go that way anyway to go up to the wolf den, and that's the snow encounter here. This is a gorgeous map made by DM Andy. I'm going to lighten it up. I have it set. I always set my maps to a little bit darker, but we'll lighten it up here for you guys. And what's going to happen here, let me just put these guys in invisibility for a sec. What's going to happen here is as the players arrive, the players are going to arrive from the south down here. They're going to hear an echo of somebody calling for help and some growling of beasts. And what we have here in the center is we have Lars. Lars is right here, and he's surrounded by 4 Worg beasts. And you remember I told you the decision tree they make at that snowy forest, whether they go down the big path up the mountain or they go to the cabin? If they don't go to the cabin, they're not going to be armed with a lot of information. They're going to see these Worg, and they're going to see this guy here asking for help. Lars is a werewolf, and he's not in werewolf form at this point, but he will convert into werewolf form. And the players have got to pick a side at this point. Do you help this guy that's surrounded by the Worg, or you help the Worg? Now, the reason that I made this seem like Lars is helpless is because if I'm kind of trying to create a perception here, right? So if the players decide to come upon this first and they don't go to Skennis in the cabin in the woods, they're going to see a guy, seemingly maybe a wolf hunter, being surrounded by these Worg, and they might come to the wolf hunter's aid, and you're going to be in an epic battle against these 4 Worg. However, if they go to Skennis, they're going to see this guy, and they're going to wonder why these Worg are attacking this guy, and this guy is actually a werewolf. They might side with the Worg. Now, if they decide to side with Lars, Lars will obviously turn into werewolf, join in the fight, and Lars will thank them, escort them to the werewolf den himself, promise them food and aid, help him. He says he's a very close friend with the clan leader Kiril. He'll tell the party the Worg have been attacking the werewolves, which is a lie, and he's been trying to find their secret lair and destroy them, orders from Kiril. If the players don't know anything from Skennis, they're going to think, yeah, these werewolves have been attacking, these Worg have been attacking the werewolf. The Worg will assume, if the party helps Lars, the Worg will assume that the party might be other werewolves, right? And it's going to be very, very hard now to win the Worg back over to your side. Now, if the party decides to help the Worg defeat Lars, then they'll tell them that Lars and other werewolves were attacking their clan and trying to find their den, and the werewolves are in league with Strahd and have turned to dark ways, kidnapping new children under this leader of Kiril. So the Worg will tell the players the truth. But the perception for the unknowing player coming up here, it's like, these are monsters, and this is a guy that needs help. Now, when you run this encounter, after each round, you're going to roll a 1d6. And if you roll 1 through 4, nothing happens at each of the combat rounds. On a number 5, Lars is going to howl. Let's have Lars howl for you here. I got a little howl sound. There we go. He turns into a werewolf. He howls, and 1d2 werewolves come from the north. I have them turned off right here, but you can just click them on, and you just can drag a werewolf into the scene. They're going to come in, and they're going to join in the fight. So he's going to call in some werewolves. On the roll of a 6, the Worg's going to howl, and 1d4 worth of Worg are going to come up from the bottom here, and they're going to join in the fight. Okay? Now, I'm making it Worg heavy because, and this is my thought process, you can change it. My thought process is if you side with the werewolves, you got to make the fight with the Worg very difficult. If you side with the Worg, you got to make the fight with the werewolves going to be a little bit easier because you're going to have to go deal with the werewolves anyway. And now you've just pissed them off. It's going to make it a lot harder to get in. So it's kind of this, you side with Lars, you got to fight the werewolves. It's got to be a hard fight, but it's going to be easy to walk into the werewolf den with Lars, right? He's going to, hey, this is my buddy. They helped saved us. Side with the Worg, it's going to be maybe a little bit easier fight against the werewolves. However, now it's going to be really difficult to get in that werewolf den. You've just killed Lars, the number 2 guy, right? Or maybe Lars escapes and he escapes. And, you know, depending on how you want to run your combat, he escapes and he warns Kiril that there's just some people that have joined with the Worg and they're going to come to attack us. Now, over here on the side, if you do side with the Worg and you beat Lars or Lars escapes, the Worg are going to bring you to Gimrock. Here's Gimrock right here. And this is going to be heavy role-playing. Now, Gimrock's going to, first of all, be very welcoming. You fought against a werewolf. You helped the Worg. So you're automatically going to be welcome just from that act alone. However, you're going to still have to convince Gimrock and the Worg to help the players in any way, and however you want to help the players and support the players in the defeat of Kiril and changing of the guard, bringing somebody new to power in the werewolf den. Gimrock's going to be reluctant. He's reluctant for 2 reasons. Number 1 is, remember, the Worg for centuries are loyal to the Fae and have promised they will not get involved in human affairs. And while the werewolves, they don't see the werewolves as humans, there are human children there, or supposedly. That's one thing. And they do not want to bring down the wrath of the humans, the wolf hunters who might begin hunting the werewolves and begin hunting the Worg. So they don't want to get involved in any human encounters if they can avoid it. Number 2 is Gimrock does not want the wrath of Strahd coming down upon him. Now, it is true that now the werewolf are actively hunting the Worg and looking for the Worg den, and Kiril now has 2 direwolves, which implies that he's in league with Strahd, and perhaps convincing Gimrock, saying, it doesn't matter. You're already on Strahd's shit list. Kiril's got 2 dire wolves, and now Lars is actively hunting you. And, you know, Gimrock will come to his senses. He'll realize that Kiril's too much of a coward. Kiril doesn't have the balls of the cojones to come after the Worg alone. He must have the power of Strahd or under Strahd's orders to do such a thing. And that would be a way to convince Gimrock. You're right. Strahd's going to try to defeat us one way or another. We might as well start defending ourselves. This makes for a great role-playing event. If you're able to help Gimrock, if you're able to convince him, Gimrock, just like with Skennis, during the Battle of Ravenloft, you could also have the Worg on your side against Ravenloft. So you can have the Worg and the werewolves on your side in the Battle of Ravenloft towards the end of the campaign, which would be really cool. So that would be the reward that Gimrock would, he's like, call upon me when you march on Ravenloft, and you will have the Worg and the Worg army fight against the forces of darkness at the Battle of Ravenloft. So that's what would happen here. So this is a pretty heavy role-playing event. You can decide if things go south in this fight down here, if you want to bring Gimrock and these Worg into battle down here. I mean, really, you can run this however you want to run it, but this gives you the foundation of how you want to run it. You'll notice there I did put I like to print some elevations so the players see, you know, what the elevations are here. In here, there's 20 feet up. So I just put those in there so the players can see what the height is in there. All right, let's get up to the werewolf den, what you've all been waiting for. This is the entrance. This is the another gorgeous Theater of the Mind map by James RPG Art. I put a little kind of lighting effect in there. You can see the light flickering. And I imagine the players along here, they've come up, they've seen the path to the entrance of the den, and they're looking up the mountain, and they can see the cliffs, and they know somewhere way up at the top there's got to be that outpost if they met Skennis, who told them about that. So let's cover the exterior first. This is the map by DM Andy, and I'm going to lighten this up for you guys as well so you guys can see it a lot better. There you go. There are three entrances in the werewolf den. We have the main entrance down here. This is the main cave. The cave looks like the jaws of a wolf in here. We got the fissure, this crack, kind of a crevasse that drops down into the underground spring right here. And then you have at the very top is the lookout, and there's a cave that is a secret entrance into the wolf den. So there's two ways to kind of sneak into the wolf den, or you can go right through the front entrance. And let's talk about this whole thing. I put something in here I thought it'd be fun, an outdoor encounter of the exterior walls, right? So you'll notice here that I put those numbers in here. It says 40 feet DC 12, 40 feet DC 10, 20 feet DC 12, 40 feet DC 12. This is to climb up this rock face. And the way I'm running this, the way this works is that a player character is going to have to take a rope and climb up the rock face. For every 10 feet, the player has to roll a DC save, otherwise they fall. So here you've got 40 feet DC 10. That means that the player, to make it up to the top, is going to have to roll for the first 10 feet. He's going to have to do a DC save at 10, another one 10, another one DC 10, DC 10. If he makes all that, he doesn't fall. Right? It's snowy, it's cold, it's rocky. He might pick, if he goes up this way, it's DC 12. To go up this way, it's 60 feet, DC 12, all the way up to the top here. And once they get up to some of these areas, there's some paths you don't have to climb and to make it all the way up. Now, I wanted to include the use of pitons. If you use the pitons here, and you use it every 5 feet or 10 feet, you don't have to roll the DC check, right? So if you use a piton every 10 feet, you're reducing 10 feet, you're reducing a check. So every 10 feet, you reduce a check. So if you use 4 pitons, you don't have to roll any check. You go up there, put a piton in, tie in a rope, go up, put it. So piton's like imagine a steel spike with a loop in it that you can tie the rope to. So you hammer it in, tie the rope, climb up another 10 feet, hammer it in, tie the rope. And you don't have to roll any DC checks, right? Because if you fall, you won't get hurt. Or you can say, I'm going to skip 10 feet and do 20 foot. So now if you fall, you're only going to fall 20 foot, right? So every time you put one in, you don't have, for 10 feet, you don't have to roll a DC check. Now, removing the pitons are difficult. Strength check is DC 18, strength check to remove them. You've hammered these things into rock. So remove them is very, very difficult. I would make it only 2 checks. You try it the first time, it's in there tight. You can try it the second time. If you can't get it out the second time, the piton's in there permanently. This enforces a couple of things. It enforces managing supplies. How many pitons are you going to use? How many can you remove? How safe is it going to be? So you've got some logistics you got to deal with. Supply logistics. How many pitons do you have? How many cliffs are you going to have to climb? You don't know as you're climbing further and further and further up. When the players get up to the fissure here, you've got this crack here, and the players will notice like kind of a flickering glow down below. They can't see too much. It gets pretty black. They can hear the drip of water. There's a little bit of heat rising up, and the snow is starting to melt and dripping down in here. Now you could probably tie to this tree right here, or hammer in a piton and lower a rope, and the player can rappel down. You can only see about 20 feet down. It's 20 feet. You assume it's 20 feet. It could be 30 feet, 40, 50, 100 feet. You don't know because you can't see that far down. Between the snow and the whiteness of the snow and the darkness, you see just a faint glow. You just don't know how far down it goes. You know there must be some water down there. You can hear the dripping of water. So it's kind of lowering down into the unknown here. So that's the fissure here. And that goes into Z4. I have that right here. It goes down to the underground Z4 spring. The next one is if you get all the way up to the top, excuse me, the top here is Z8. That's the Ring of Stone. This is the lookout area. There's a smoldering fire pit, a Ring of Stone. It's an outpost. It has a vantage point. You can see over the entire valley down below, down to the tree line. They can see anybody approaching. At night, there's a single werewolf on guard. You can decide to roll a perception check if he sees any of the people, trying to climb up the mountain or climb up the cliffs to try to get to him. You could probably run some perception checks. That's up to you on how do you want to run that. But there's always going to be a werewolf. There's a changing of the werewolf guard right around midnight here. During the daytime, it's rare that anybody's out there. However, Zuleika comes out here, and she comes out here during the day to peer out over the valley, hoping to get a glimpse to see Emil, her mate, to return to take over the pack again. It's kind of a moment of solitude, a moment of peace, a moment of hope that she's searching out for her lover, her mate, the once clan leader to come back. Hopefully, he's not coming back, obviously. But this is a good opportunity. If the players get up there in the daytime, it might be a good way to role play, introduce Zuleika here, and she could lead them back in the secret entrance, perhaps come up with a plan to rescue the child or destroy or kill Kiril or do whatever you need to do. So it would be a good way to introduce Zuleika if you want to. Again, that would depend on you, the number of players you have, your player level. If your players are pretty strong, you got a pretty strong party, you might not want to put her there and make it a little bit more difficult as the players are entering. So those are the three entrances. There's the ideas of how to use the pitons. You can put your own numbers here on the mountains. I made some DC 14, 20-foot DC 12. There's a little DC 10 easier one up here. Some areas there's a path up. Sometimes there's a wall. The players are going to have to explore this themselves. One of the things you could add some weather effects if it's really cold or really snowy and blurry. They're not going to be able to make it more difficult for them to climb on the rope. All of those things are some mechanics that you can introduce. Gives you some basis to operate by and make this kind of an outdoor kind of a fun climb and dangerous climb. And maybe a werewolf's at the top and sees them. Makes it kind of a fun outdoor experience and encounter. So let's jump inside to the interior here. Oh, gotta put these werewolves back to where they belong. I got a werewolf here. He's supposed to be up here. I don't know what's he doing down there. And what's she doing down there? There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So as the players enter here, I'm going to lighten this up a little bit too. I make them dark when I run the game. I like to run my stuff dark here in Barovia. So when the players enter the opening of the cave mouth here, that's Z1. By the way, as you know, I do have links to D&D Beyond if you're running rules as written. If you own Curse of Strahd electronically, here's the link. It takes you back to the webpage. If the players are here, I would run a perception check for Davanka. She's on watch right here near the mouth of the cave with another werewolf. And I would make the DC check for her based on how the characters are approaching. The characters are really careful as they're approaching. I would make her DC check 16, maybe even 18 or higher. If the characters are not taking any caution as they're entering, make the DC check 12. Make it easier for her to realize somebody's trying to enter the cave. And so they're going to see, there's a description about the cave entrance and the snow-covered mountains and a light emitting from the cave in here. You've got these torches flickering in here. Now, this is the guard area right here is Z2 is the guard area. And let's talk about this for a second. So you'll see the path splits to the left and to the right. And she is, for the most part, going to be on the left side. And that goes to the wolf den area. And this area is where all the activity is. The other side goes to the underground spring and a storage area that's lightly guarded. If the players are able to get in here and she fails her perception check, the players can go to the right and go into the right unnoticed. Right? They'll get by unnoticed going to the right. If they go to the left, she failed her check, and they go to the left, by the time they get here, she'll notice them. Right here, she doesn't need to roll a perception check. She will notice them as soon as the players get parallel to the cliff here. Now, this is about a 10-foot cliff. You'll notice that I put a wall in here, a one-way wall. And the way this works is if your players are down here, let's say the players are her, they can't see up here. And so she's up here, she can see them, they can't see her. So if the players are moving around like this, and she's up here, right when they get here, she's going to be rushing down these steps and confronting the players. Now, if she did see them enter, she's going to wait for them to enter. And if they go left or right, it doesn't matter. She's going to jump down and surprise them. At the same time, she's going to send out the alert howl, which we played for you earlier. She's going to go 1d4 more werewolves and 1d4 rounds will approach. She's going to tell the players to stand down right away. She's not going to attack. She's going to be ready to attack. And when she jumps down, she surprises the players. So when you begin the combat encounter and they roll initiative, you're going to say the players are surprised, right? They're going to be surprised when she jumps down. She has advantage. She's going to go first. Before she attacks them, she's going to go stand down right now. Who are you? Stand down. If the player's going to attack, she's going to howl anyway. You're going to have another bunch of werewolves show up. So the players are going to be in trouble. They're going to have to decide how to do it. You got a role-playing, short period of role play. Otherwise, you guys are going to go full into combat, and it's not going to be good. Now, if the players have come into the cave, maybe they're there. Maybe Skennis has come with them. Maybe they rescue Lars. If Lars comes in, Lars, Skennis, another werewolf, they're going to alert into the cave that they're approaching. They're going to howl. That's going to let Davanka and the other werewolf know that some werewolves are approaching. Stand down. And then the players can enter in without being attacked or being harmed. So that's how that plays out. Now, if they go to the left over to the werewolf den, which is over here, by the time they get here, you remember, she's going to jump in behind them. She's going to move in behind them. And over here we've got the big scene. This is the big werewolf den. Let's bring this up. I can do it this way too. Werewolf den, there it is. Right. Kiril is standing here in the werewolf den. Coming up behind the players will be another werewolf. And he's going to immediately want to know what these players... And he's going to be flanked by these two giant dire wolves. He's going to need to know what the players have come for. Maybe the players are coming for the ritual. We've got somebody with lycanthropy. We need to do the taming ritual. If that's the case, he's going to negotiate some kind of deal with them. It's going to help him. Hey, we're fighting off the Worg. Help us. We'll help you, kind of thing. If they arrive with Lars, they're going to be welcomed into the pack. Kiril's going to welcome Lars. Lars is Kiril's best friend. Hey, these guys helped me defeat the Worg. We think we know where the den is to go attack the Worg. They helped me survive. What brought them here? They need some food, help. One of them maybe has lycanthropy. Can we help them out? Kiril's going to welcome them in. Now, if Kiril determines they are enemies of Strahd, at any point, he's going to attempt to lock them up in cages and notify Strahd. Now, what happens if you go into an attack here? You might be running into these players that dislike to always, everything's going to be a fight. I don't like that, but you might have players that always like to fight. I mean, this guy is a bad guy. He's going to try to talk to them first, find out what they want. If they go into a fight, he's going to send his werewolves in first. Round 2, 1d4 plus 1 more werewolves will arrive. Round 4, 1d4 plus another plus 1 more werewolves will arrive. You've already got these two behind them. It is very possible that this could turn into a TPK. Okay? Very possible. Kiril's always going to hang back. And let's talk about Kiril a little bit. Kiril is kind of guy that I imagine is like a coward bully, right? He has a big bite, a big bark. He barks a lot. He acts tough. He acts like a brute, but secretly he's a coward, right? Even Bianca, his mate, is stronger than him. Maybe that has kind of eviscerated him a little bit. Now he has these two dire wolves, and he imagined I've got Strahd on my side, so he's got these two dire wolves that don't leave his side. He'll have the dire wolves attack to defend him first. And if things do go south, he'll run away. He'll try to escape the den. He'll go all the way up through to Z6 and then out through the northern top escape route. However, I mean, it's very possible that you're going to be surrounded by werewolves really, really fast, and this could go to a TPK, and you don't want to do that. So I'm going to make a very horrible suggestion. So bear with me here, and this is a little horrific. But this is Gothic horror, and and I think this is probably appropriate. If you've watched the show The Walking Dead, they had a character on their name is Negan. And I imagine to some extent that Kiril's like Negan. Now, when we first meet Negan, we've got all our players on their knees. And Negan's surrounded by his clan. Well, Kiril's going to be surrounded by his werewolf and his direwolves. This is the opportunity for Kiril to show who's boss, right? Remember, I said Kiril's a bully. He's a coward by himself. He's, a bully. And bullies are usually cowards by themselves. But what did Negan do in The Walking Dead? He had a baseball bat with barbed wire around it, and he randomly just killed one of the party members. They were all on their knees. He just killed them, pulverized them with this baseball bat. As a warning to all the other players to stand down, this is what happens. It was shocking, horrific, and unexpected. And that is what I would do in this scene. If they're surrounded by the other werewolves, and it looks to be like a TPK, and you don't want to go TPK, Kiril's, forces them. They're all around. They force them to the ground. And Kiril walks up, I imagine, with one of his fangs to a random player, and just cuts his throat right open. And that player's blood just rushes out, and the player falls over dead. And he locks up the rest of the players. This avoids the TPK. The other player's dead. He can throw the body out. He throws the body out the front of the cave, lets it roll down the hill. That player that gets killed turns into a revenant. You use my revenant, the revenant race thing that I created. I'll put a link in there, and they become back as a revenant. The other players are now locked in cages. This creates excellent role-playing now because you have Zuleika, who will try to help the players escape. You have Wensencia with the little kid who will try to offer to help the players to get out and escape. You have even Bianca, who might be horrified about what happened, escape. And you could eventually have the tables turned to have an epic battle or a crazy escape out of there. And the player that you've killed, it now becomes a revenant and comes back and helps the player. So you could end the session there. I mean, that's how I would end it. He cuts the throat of one of the players. The player falls down dead in front of everybody. Everybody's horrid. And there's no save. You just say, he just cut your throat. You're dead. You see the other werewolves drag the dead player's body out and throw it out of the cave. He's like, he goes, it's not even worth eating. Dispose of the body. Throw it down the mountain. Lock the rest of them up. And that's how you end your session. Beginning of the next session, the players are all locked in cages in the other room. You tell the other player who's been killed, you say, you're coming back as a revenant. Give him the revenant document. He has to roll up for the dark stuff, or she has to roll up. She's now laying in the snow, or he's laying in the snow, comes back as a revenant, which would be really cool. Now, Kiril doesn't know, but now the other player come back as a revenant, could come back and try to rescue the party. Meanwhile, the players are locked up, and maybe Zuleika or Bianca or Wensencia are going to try to help the players escape. That's how I would play it. I would not let this go to a total TPK. I would up the hate. When they say when their players drop, where Kiril just, you could have them gut them, or you could have them just cut the throat and the player die in shock in front of everybody. No saves, nothing. The player's just dead. Now the rest of the party really hates Kiril, right? I mean, you've amped it up. You've made this personal, and that's what you want to do with Gothic Horror. You really want to make this tough. So I would avoid the TPK here if it does get to that. So that's the wolf den scene here. Okay, let's jump over to Z4. And I apologize if that was too morbid and horrific for you, but that's how I would play it. Okay, over here you have the underground spring. And what's interesting here, and I'm really happy for DM Andy put this little light, and this is the light that's coming down through the crevice or the fissure up above, 20 feet up above, and the snow is melting and dripping down into the cave here. Now this side, it is possible if the players snuck through, they wouldn't notice. They would be able to make it in here. They'll see the fissure. You can enter and exit here unnoticed if you were able to get in. If the werewolves don't know, they could rappel down here into the side. This side is not guarded. Now, to the north of the spring, there's a little cliff here. They can climb up, and that enters into Z5. We'll talk about that in a second. The water's fresh water. There's a few flickering torches. The water's really not that deep in here. And you'll see these stone steps that are leading up to here, and that's the storage area. What's interesting about the storage area, if the players search through these crates, they're going to see some markings from Vallaki on it. Remember, Kiril's been raiding the wagon supplies from Vallaki to Kresk. He's been killing the guards, stealing what he thinks, trying to kidnap children, obviously, as we know, stealing supplies. There's some clothes, leather armor, weapons, some items that you would think that would become from Vallaki to Kresk. Perhaps some pitons, rope, chain, wolf traps, some stuff, maybe some blacksmiths and stuff had made in Vallaki. I'll let you figure what those things out. Nothing's magical, nothing worth a lot of money. Mostly the supplies from raiding the wagons, supply wagons, going to Kresk from Vallaki. So that's what I would have up here. You could even have maybe some Wizard of Wine up here, some wine bottles or whatever. That's what I would be throwing in up here in the storage area. Players might find a better weapon or something like that, or maybe some more supplies that they might need. Now, this area right here, Z5, is the deep caves. What's interesting about Z5, and I just want to point this out, if the players do sneak in down through the fissure, climb up here, they could sneak in down into the ritual area here, the Shrine to Mother Night, or they could sneak around and actually come out through ZA. So they could possibly go undetected. It is a possibility to go undetected through the caves if they're careful. We're going to talk about Z5a, which is the southern cave. And in the Z5a, the southern cave, they're going to hear two females speaking to each other, and it's Bianca and Aziana. And if the players decide to listen in, they're going to hear Aziana growing concern about Kiril and the kidnapping and children. Aziana's worried. She's like, Bianca, we got to stop kidnapping these children. It's only going to bring the wolf hunters upon us. Now, Aziana doesn't really care about the children. She cares about the wolf hunters coming there. She's lost her mate. She doesn't want wolf hunters coming with silvered weapons hunting werewolves anymore. So that's what she is really concerned about. Bianca agrees, and she's attempting to calm Aziana, but you can't tell from Bianca's demeanor if she's just trying to appease Aziana at this point and calm her down, or she agrees fully with what Aziana's saying. Now, when that conversation ends, they're going to notice the players, and what you want to do is make this a time element. I would say they notice you, and you got to 30 seconds or 60 seconds to shit talk your way out of this one, because Bianca and Aziana are about to attack you. You are people in the den that aren't supposed to be there, so you got to do some quick talking. And I would actually have a timer element. I would time them. I would start a stopwatch or something. You got to start role playing fast. You're under a lot of stress. You got to convince Bianca and Aziana not to attack you right now and start howling and calling for aid. This is one of those really fun, stressful role-playing situation under a timing, because it's going to be fun. You got to convince them. Otherwise, one of the two are going to howl, and pretty soon Bianca's going to be fierce. I mean, she's 90 hit points, 18 strength. She in multi-attack, she's going to really tear into your party hard if they can't convince her. And she's going to howl, and you're going to have a bunch of werewolves on you. So this is that moment where you need to convince her. Perhaps we're here to rescue the child. Perhaps we're here to kill Kiril, take Kiril out and end this atrocity. We're, something that you think Bianca would be convinced by. And she has to have faith that you guys can help, because, she's kind of becoming resentful of her mate. But if she doesn't think you guys can do it, she's going to take you guys out. I'll leave it up to you, but I would call this a high stress role playing event right here. And that's how I would play this. The next one we have up here is Z5a and B. I'm sorry, that's the North Cave. And this is where Wensencia is with Kellen. Now, if there was an alert, if any of the wolves howled, called an alert, Wensencia is going to go and leave and go to aid, and she's going to tell Kellen to hide underneath the blanket here. So if the players approach and Wensencia isn't here, you're going to see something moving under the blanket. If it's nighttime, she's going to be in werewolf form and out of control. If it's the daytime, she's going to be a scared kid. Remember, she's cursed. She can be cured. Excuse me. And I'll leave that up to you on how you want to do that. Now, if Wensencia is here, and you managed to sneak in this far, again, this is going to be that role play moment where the players are going to have to make a decision very, very quickly, because if Wensencia feels like the shit's about to go down serious, Wensencia's just going to grab this kid and she's going to run out the Z6 entrance and never come back. If the players can convince her that they're trying to bring back Emil, she might stay and help. But otherwise, unless she feels that the players are going to get rid of Kiril, she sees this as an opportunity to escape with Kellen. They're both going to run out. She's going to grab this child. They're going to run out and they're going to escape through the north tunnel, out the entrance to the lookout area that I pointed out before. And again, if she's not here, this child's either going to be in child form or werewolf form hiding. That leads us to Z6 right up here. And Z6 is the leader's cave. Now, Kiril's taken over, and Kiril has kind of decorated this. There's a pile of hides in the center that serves as a bed. It's kind of nasty. Kiril's decorated the place with animal hides as well as some human skin hides. There's some assorted skulls and stuff. The place has become kind of, I don't know, even Bianca's finding it rather disgusting. Bianca doesn't like to sleep here with Kiril anymore. Kiril's kind of gone into a very dark state. He's sleeping with all these skulls. Some of them are children's skulls and children bones. It's just not even right. And even Bianca's getting a little disgusted by it. Now, there is a secret door. It's not much of a secret, but there's a kind of a stretched, I imagine, a stretched animal skin or a human skin with some of the sinew stretching it that hides. The players can see behind it. There's a torch that hides the tunnel that leads up to Z8, to the lookout area. Now, if the players do search these skulls, they're going to find a ring of protection in them. This ring of protection is just a +1 bonus to AC and saving throws wearing the ring. It's a nice ring. It belongs to Kiril, and he lost it. Now, I imagine Kiril, when he's on his own and he's feeding on the dead remains of children, as he's kind of in some kind of drunken blood stupor, he took off the ring and hid it in one of the skulls in some kind of weird kind of thing, thinking, I don't want to lose it. Forgot about it. And if players find it, they could probably use it as a bargaining chip. Look what we have, or whatever. If Kiril has whatever reason, some great value he places in this ring. Players could keep it or whatever, but I just thought I'd throw in a fun loot item there. All right, we get into the very important ritual chamber here in the Shrine of Mother Night. And two things here. When the players enter the cavern, they're going to notice these 6 cages along the wall. The cages are emptied, but they're dried there's a bunch of dried blood caked on them. In the center of the room, there is a big statue of a female werewolf. There's a bowl of blood sitting right down below the statue. It's kind of dried up a little bit there. And there's a woman kneeling and praying in front of the statue. You'll notice that. And that's Zuleika. And if the players don't run into her up at the lookout during the daytime, like I said, she'll be down here at night praying at the statue, praying for Emil's safety, praying for his return, praying for this horrid shit show to end. This is the room where Skennis references. He says, Skennis, remember, tells the players is that Kiril has desecrated our shrine, desecrated the Mother Night with children's human blood. This area, this room, has been, for centuries, the ritual chamber of the Taming Ritual, the statue of Mother Night's here. This is a sacred place to the werewolf, and Kiril is treating it like shit. He's bringing in human children, having them fight, feeding on their bones, converting human children into werewolves. It's really, really changed the morale and kind of the feeling and the mood of everything, desecrating this kind of place that Skennis said, I can't live here anymore. You've desecrated, this place. By the way, here is the statue of the werewolf Mother Night. Werewolves believe the very first werewolf was a female villager, and they worship her, Mother Night. Now, this is if they see, there's none of the children here. The only person in this room at this point is Zuleika. If they can convince Zuleika maybe to rescue the child or whatever, Zuleika will be the only werewolf that will immediately befriend the players. The other ones, the players are going to have to convince Bianca, Aziana, or Wensencia. All the other werewolves will attack or try to capture them. But those other three, you can try to convince them to come over to their side. The other werewolves, Lars, Kiril, any other werewolves, Davanka, all of those will see the players as a threat. And even Bianca will, unless you convince her quickly. Same thing with Aziana. This is also the area where, by the way, the statue of Mother Night, which I showed you, you're going to see all this gold and silver and wealth laying around the statue. You can see that right here in there. And the reason for that is the werewolf don't need the gold or the wealth. They've been raiding the supply lines from Vallaki to Kresk. And remember, all the werewolves feel betrayed by the humans. They've been exiled and ostracized by the villagers. And so there's this deep-rooted hatred among all the werewolves against the villagers because they've been exiled. They're saying they don't understand us. We've learned how to control this. We've been abandoned by them. And they see that the villagers place wealth over the value of the werewolves, who technically were villagers at one time in there. And so since the villagers see that the most valued thing is wealth, what they do is they steal the gold and silver, not because they want the value of the gold and silver. It's the greatest vengeance. The greatest harm they could do other than killing humans is stealing their money. And they place that around the shrine as a tribute. And it's also a personification and direct indication of how much wealth they have stolen from the humans, how much harm. It's kind of a measurement of how much harm. The more, if you're a werewolf and you show up with a huge bag of gold and you pour it down at the Mother Night statue, you're seen by the other werewolves. It's like, oh yeah, you did a lot of harm to them because they put so much value into wealth. So it's kind of a way of shaming and taking vengeance on humans by stealing their wealth. And so around this statue is all this gold, all this silver jewelry. Now I always like to make it not completely random, but random. So I put some rolls in here. So it's 2d100 plus 100 gold. In this case, it came up to 133 gold. 40 plus 200, so 491 silver. There are 10 pieces of gold jewelry. The gold jewelry are worth 28 gold each. There's a drinking horn with some ornately carvings on it that's worth 280 gold. And there's a platinum statue worth 664 gold. All of this stuff has been taken, and actually a lot of it more recently from Kiril's raids on there. So this is what's in front of the Mother Night. Now remember, we talked about the Taming Ritual, and let's just go through that again here. So the player would be locked in one of these cages or chained to the wall. The sacrifice, the blood of the sacrifice, remember we talked about it being in here. I'm just going to bring this up over here and put it on the side. The sacrifice for the Taming Ritual will be either a small animal, DC 20, domesticated animal, DC 18, a wild beast or something worthy of killed, DC 14, or a human villager, DC 10. And the player, all the werewolves during the Taming Ritual, all the werewolves attend. It's a big deal. I'll just put them all in here. So all the werewolves come in here. They're all in here attending this big deal for the Taming Ritual. We got Bianca, everybody in here. We're gonna show you the Taming Ritual, how I run it. So they're all in here. I'll just put some more in here. It's a big deal. This is a huge deal. You've got the blood here, sacrifice. The person that's performing it here, we'll just pretend Bianca's the new leader. She's performing the ritual, and your player is locked in one of the cages. She's going to stand over the blood, and as she stands over the blood, everybody's going to start doing this ritual in this werewolf form. And you're going to notice that the whole room emanating from the statue is this light. And let's just turn that on right now. Okay, there is the light as a ritual performs. And all of them start going into this ritual sound, and we're going to play it for you. So the ritual itself, called the Taming Ritual, to tell you what this recording is I recorded the Maori Haka dance. That's the warrior dance of the Maori from New Zealand. It's sung at the beginning of when the New Zealand Rugby All Blacks play, they play the haka. And it's a war dance. And I thought, oh, that sounds really cool. So if I slow it down and alter it, this will be the ritual that all the werewolves begin singing out as they get this blood ready for the werewolf, to drink, to see if you survive the taming and become a werewolf who can truly control his werewolf form. So here's the haka song. I'll put that on there for you. I just can imagine that they're all shouting. One of them's leading this ritual. Maybe one of them has some horn that they're blowing. And the player's got to roll the dice to see if he survives this, right? If he survives the taming ritual or fails. So that was it. That was the taming ritual. So the player's going to roll, as I mentioned before, here the die, and the DC is set by whatever the sacrifice was. If it was a small animal, it's DC 20. If it was a small animal, I'd also have the other werewolves kind of look at you like, really? A bunny rabbit? That's the sacrifice. A squirrel? Really? A squirrel? Did you kill that squirrel all on your own? Were you able to do that? And then give them a little shit. Most of the werewolves, in fact, all the werewolves in the clan sacrifice a wild beast. They go out there and they hunt by themselves, either a dire wolf or some beast worthy of being sacrificed to become this. So anything that's like a domesticated or a small animal, you're going to be ostracized. You're going to be teased a little bit of ribbing, of course. If you sacrifice a human, people are going to be like, whoa, dude, this guy or gal is pretty serious. So that's how I would run the ritual there, the taming ritual. Again, this is really cool, is if you have a player at the beginning of the campaign that's been cursed. When we talk about that player hook, maybe they have inherited and they can't control it, or maybe they're cursed and there's a timing element where eventually it's becoming permanent. Getting them there and doing this ritual is a great way of concluding that player hook here as well. So that's it. The last place was the Ring of Stones. We already did that. That's where this cave ends up going. If you go up this stairwell, that ends up at the exterior up here at the top of the cave, at the very, very, very top. So I really hope you like the Werewolf Den. I really, really like putting the lycanthropy mechanics together, weaving in some of the lore. Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell icon to be alerted for any new Curse of Strahd guides or any other guides and videos that I put together. And this is Pyram King signing off. May all your rolls be critically successful. Thanks for watching.